We're live.
We are. We made it. No, we got a couple of text messages. Thank anybody who was actually waiting on us. We was like, no one's waiting on us, but
There
we
were
were.
some people.
Thank you. Thank you for waiting. Um, as we're on this journey of decolonizing time and allowing ourselves to just show up in the
Mhm.
right time for us so that we can be full. So thank you all. Gonna wait for folks to come into the room. And we are going to get started. I'm so excited about this conversation because it's basically my life is having this conversation.
Mhm.
And I'm just going to check out what we look like on Instagram
Ditto.
because you might not be able to see our faces. So let's see. Let's check it out. Oh, yeah, you can't. So let's see.
And so if you're watching us on IG right now and you prefer to actually see both of us, just head on over to YouTube.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you could just listen in.
Yes, I would encourage that. So we are streaming from a different program, and we're not actually going live from Instagram. So if you are tuning in on Instagram, I'm actually about to put us back on the preferred view so that we
Mhm.
can actually document this conversation and share it to our YouTube. I'm just gonna quickly put like pin something in the IG to tell people that. Okay. Oh, that's funny. I posted from my own account. Can't pin it like that. Appreciate y'all's patience. Um, yeah, I think that's the best I could do for right now because I realize now that um, because I'm not going live from my phone, I can't really access the live on my phone. So here we are transitioning out of tech troubleshooting and into this conversation, decolonizing caregiving, which is very near and dear to both of our hearts. I think this topic comes out of just our lifestyles and
Mhm.
things that we've been talking about over the years, probably even before we like knew each other. Just being present with the fact that we are natural caregivers of ourselves, our families, the land, and recognizing that there isn't always spaciousness within our current power structures and the systems that are for us to be full in that. So, this conversation is just going to be just inspirations and stories that have come through, and we encourage for anybody tuning in to comment, ask questions so that you can be a part of this conversation. We definitely want you here with us, and we're grateful for anybody spending their afternoon here. We used to have our chats in the evening, but in the spirit of truly decolonizing, we're like, that just kind of doesn't work for us, and bedtimes for children and all the needs. So, thank you for tuning in at this time. And to get started, I got inspired from a meeting I had earlier where we kind of just started talking about our moon cycles. I wanted to just check in with you, Mama Kaya, and I can check in as well. Just where are you at in your your season? What's your personal season right now? Where are you at in your cycle?
Well, my personal cycle season is I'm in the winter season right now. So today is day one. As you can probably tell, my energy is a little lower, more relaxed and calm. Body expression is a little bit more relaxed, and even my eyes are lower. Everything is just relaxed right now. So I'm enjoying this hibernation moment and just, you know, enjoying being cared for. This is the season where I am cared for the most. So,
Mm, I hope by more than just yourself.
oh yeah, for sure, for sure. Now, what about you?
Thank you for that. I am in my personal autumn. I am post ovulation, so I've moved past my hot girl summer, and I definitely feel the shift. Like I still feel like I have some energy to do stuff. So I've been putting a lot of my focus into like prepping in the house. So I've been like
Mhm.
making up meals, making soup, just kind of thinking about the week ahead and thinking about the fact that next week I will be bleeding. And, I'm not going to have as much energy to do stuff. So I'm just getting stuff done right now. I'm prepping food, I'm cleaning space. We're also in the middle of a move.
Mhm.
So I've been doing a lot of like logistical things because I know next week when we actually start moving things to the new house, like I'm not going to be able to support. I'm just going to be a witness. And so I'm doing like my work ahead of time. And I definitely feel that shift into where you are, which is just a little bit more like insular and more focused on just myself.
Mhm.
And I'm grateful. I'm grateful to be like aware because this wasn't always how it's been in my life. I was
Mhm.
just kind of like moving through life, and then, my period would come and I'd be surprised, or either I'd be like super aroused and I'd be surprised, and just had no idea that, um, you know, my body was operating in the same ways as like our earth, as the moon, that we have seasons for certain things.
Mhm.
So I'm just really grateful to be in this place now, having that awareness and being able to act in accordance.
Mm.
But thank you for that check in. It just felt so good earlier. I feel like the whole tone of our meeting, which had nothing to do about like cycles or bleeding or energy level, like we had something to talk about, but
Mhm.
starting it off in that way, I felt like was just a small little way to even decolonize like what it means to like have a meeting, like to have a,
Mhm.
a work meeting and to gather and to be connected to other human beings. So thank you for that.
Of course, of course.
So I wanted to just jump right into the conversation talking about um, something. I mentioned it at the start, but I think there were a few things that came up when we were discussing like truly decolonizing caregiving. Like we have to decolonize at the start, so we
Mhm.
were talking about like conception and pregnancy and birth, but then also talking about like just this concept of time
Mm.
and how that shows up in everything, like in the professional sphere, in parenting, like these timelines and milestones, and even like in pregnancy and birth, like,
Mhm.
somebody keeping time and how time in and of itself really lends itself to us being in practices with ourselves and with others that really don't honor who we are and like our potential and our wellness.
Yeah.
So I know like there are these small ways that we can reclaim our time. And one of those was like being late to this conversation. um, but also, I just wanted to talk about it in relationship to like how we even got here, like how the tribe got into relationship with each other was like through having children, raising them, birthing them in particular ways that, in my opinion, really kind of defied time in the way that we know it in, contemporary mainstream logic. But really reclaiming it. So I wanted to talk a little bit about that. And since I feel like you are more close to having had a baby, it's been 5 years for me. I wanted to kind of give space if there's anything that comes up for you as you've been thinking about like starting at the start, like the true start for us as humans.
Yeah. So when it comes down to like, well, first of all, I've been wanting to say this since we jumped on decolonizing time. This idea of like color people time, that's like just natural time. Okay, we're doing things within the rhythm of nature, not based off of some type of clock or a system that was created. It does help us, for the things that we need, but it's not always necessary in order to fulfill a goal or to complete a task. And I also think that it definitely contributes to a certain level of psychosis that us as indigenous people kind of go through because we're not living harmoniously. So, yeah, I'm not even gonna say color people time no more or whatever. It's just I'm here. I'm on time. Okay, I'm on time. You might be late. I'm on time. So, but okay, as it comes to conception, I think that when I'm speaking from my own personal experience. When I conceived, and I'm gonna say my son because he's the youngest. He's a little over a year right now. When I conceived him, I knew when I conceived him. I knew the moment I conceived him. It's because I am a family planner. Some people do things happenstance, and I don't. Not now. I don't. So yeah, he was created with intention, and I think he was created within the right time. In that very period of time, my grandmother was transitioning back to the essence, and my son was coming in. So it was like it was perfect. It was just like I don't know. It just felt like a wound had opened, and then the wound had healed, and it was right in the same period of time. So I don't know. It felt loved. I felt loved on, and I just think that it was perfect timing for us to conceive him then. I would also say, given my pregnancy and how that went, I had a wild pregnancy. So that's a term that people use to mean they are managing their own prenatal care. And I decided that I didn't need anyone else to manage me or the time or timeline of my pregnancy. I felt very comfortable with managing my own care. I felt very comfortable with not even knowing everything that I needed to know or what some would say I needed to know. I was comfortable with that. I didn't need to know if I was 35 weeks or if I was 37 weeks. It didn't really matter because I was allowing my body the time that it needed to tell me what was necessary, what was the next steps. My body had its own intelligence, and I was honoring and respecting that. So that was my way of caring for myself, caring for my seed, caring for time in general, and just honoring nature. So that's like the first thing that comes to my mind when I think about like the caregiving of conception. I also manage my own prenatal nutrition, and I did that through food. And my son is a happy, loving little rambunctious boy, and there's nothing misaligned with. So yeah, I think my relationship to conception and the care that I created around that, it was wonderful, and I'm eager to do it again. So
Thank you for that. While you were talking at the beginning, talking about just like the seemingly organic timeline of like your relative passing out on one end of the life cycle, and then having like finding out that you're pregnant. Well, not even, finding out in the moment that you're pregnant. It made me think about this idea of like, people talk about conscious conception,
Mhm.
and I mean, it means a whole thing that I won't get into, but the way that I have been kind of saying that is this idea that um, the way that people talk about it is that it's all about like you as the person who's getting pregnant. Like you're so conscious, or you and your partner are so conscious of this thing, and you're intentionally doing this. But like conscious conception can be like really without you. Like I know a whole bunch of people who got pregnant on like accident,
Mhm. Mhm.
without intention, I will say. But when we think about consciousness, like, are we only counting like the adult body that's going to carry the life? Like the
Right.
consciousness goes, it's like all around, like it's all around us. So, like that spirit that's coming through is conscious too. And
Yeah.
so, even like just having conversations where like we're getting deeper and deeper into the essence of like our human selves, like our mammalian selves, like
Mhm.
sometimes the things that we talk about or the language that we use to even talk about it, I think it still needs like that extra layer of like teasing out, like decolonizing, because it's not just about, were you doing Pilates and were you, drinking all of your veggie juices and, calling your baby in your dreams. It's like, were you also just receptive to the fact that maybe you're not in control and like something else is coming through
Yeah.
at the time that it needs to. So I was really thinking about that. Um, and like, even when it comes to like care, like the care that we provide ourselves, a lot of the times, like specifically during like conception, pregnancy, in preparation for labor, a lot of times when we're receiving care from someone else, even if they're like well intentioned, they lack our own body and an awareness of our body. And so we kind of just release our own authority very easily.
Mhm.
And in other ways, like probably anybody we asked today, like, are you just going to be like, here's all my money, I just saved 200K, let me just give this over to somebody else just because you had 200K before? Some people still do, but if you worked really hard for that money and you want to make sure that your next move is your best move, you're going to be thinking and researching and figuring
Mhm.
out, if you are going to give that authority over, like, who is it going to be? You're not going to just go to your local uh and I'm thinking in terms of like when people are pregnant, they just go to the hospital that's near. Maybe they'll
Mhm.
travel an extra 10 miles or whatever because this one is a better hospital. But then they'll just give this most precious process over.
Mhm.
And this is not like to shame anybody for this. This is woven into our culture.
Yeah.
But, if it's something that we feel like is really important or really valuable to us, like we are doing all of that extra work ourselves. And so that feels important to note around like decolonizing care is not just like saying that you don't need care. It's like, in fact, you actually need a lot, but it can look very differently, and it can be directed by you, and it can be directed by people who are actually in touch with your body and with your intentions. And we were talking about this when we were talking about like the professionalization of like birth
Yep.
workers,
Yep.
from doulas to midwives. And I don't, granted, I'm not like a history buff or anything like that. So anybody who watches this, feel free to check me in the comments. But I'm almost certain that nowhere in our history were people before like professionalization, were people attending, like if you were like a grand midwife, or you were, the patera of your town or whatever,
Mhm.
never in like your lifetime were you attending thousands of births in just like a year or two. Like
Right.
you weren't just like, you know, you might attend 1,000 in your lifetime because you're
Mhm.
actually attending births for people who are in your community that you have relationship to, um, who you share some value or cultural reference. You're drinking from the same water, you're breathing the same air, you're eating from the same land, and you have investment in each other.
Mm-hmm.
But now it's, and this is even beyond just, birth, but we're in this predicament where we don't really have connection with the way that we receive resource. Like it's just very assembly line. And so I think that in and of itself, whenever we can take an opportunity to say, I'm just going to step outside of this assembly line. And if you assess that the help that you actually need is like this assembly line, that's still you decolonizing because you stepped back and thought about it instead of just doing what somebody else did or what somebody told you to do. You step back, you assess your current level of health, what you had access to, what support you had, and you said, you know what? It's the assembly line for me. But what if it's not? A lot of times when we do step back, we realize that it's not that, or it's not the version of it that's seemingly available. And then that's where like the spaciousness to just kind of co-create what you actually need comes from. And to me, that's like the epitome of like decolonizing, is just like looking at all of the ways that we have just fast-paced, professionalized all of these professions that really, I think the way that I was saying it before, like this isn't a very beautiful way, not very poetic, but like the very like mammalian parts of us, like just those primal human parts of us, like have all been kind of professionalized in a way where it feels a little off to me, because we're basically saying you as a human don't really know how to human. So here's a space where you can go and have some other humans who've studied the wisdom that's worthy to show you how to human. So, how to birth and, how to, and I was joking. Right. I was joking with Kaya, like, pretty soon people are going to be like, I don't know. I want to have sex, but I don't know. I haven't really done this before. So I want to go to the people who know about it. So, let me just sit up on this bed and you show me what positions and how to moisten. And, it's giving like, man.
It's giving robot.
Yeah, it is.
No, seriously.
Like,
we are moving into that. We are moving into that age of, I don't know, do they call it transhumanism? Where everything is gonna like shifting into like robotics, and humans are relying more on AI than they are on like human instinct, because we have so many tools, we have so much technology, and like one of my elders said, technology makes people stupid. It can help you. It can, for sure, whatever, if you know how to use it as a tool. But if you don't know how to use it as a tool, or you allow it to control you, then you're losing parts of your humanity. And so, based off of what you're saying, like, we do have people and professions that are teaching us how to be human, which, I mean, if another species, if they could understand us, I know they probably looking at us like, what? I'm a dog. Don't nobody ever teach me how to be a dog. I just wake up and be a dog, but we've gotten so far from our humanity that this is where we are now. So when we're talking about decolonizing caregiving in the terms of conception and time, it's also like reclaiming our humanity. That's woven into the conversation as well, because that is going to be the foundation, or like that's what you kind of fall back on. That's your why. At least for me, I'll speak for myself. That is my why. I want to be human. I don't want to be I don't want to be attached to robotics and technology in that type of way. I don't want it to control me. So that's what I'd like to just contribute to that part.
Yeah. Everything you say, just like, I don't know, I'm starting to think in like little pictorial like bubbles. Like when you said something, I just like envisioned, and of course this is me romanticizing the past. I don't really know, but like in the past, before we had access to like all of this stimulation, like being able to be online and check our phones and text message and phone calls and stuff, there was only a certain amount that the brain had to process every day.
Mhm.
And so now we process so much. And like, think about our kids, like they're processing so much with these
Mm.
new brains. And when you talked about being a robot, like I sometimes feel like I'm short circuiting because like I don't even have the infrastructure. Like I don't have like the hardware for
Mhm.
all of the programs and all of the, information coming in. And then I think that shows up in me like short circuiting in a way, because it's just like, girl, you were never meant to like hold all of this, all of these thoughts, other people's thoughts and opinions, some of your own grapplings, all these emotions, and not having like a way to like detox it all because it's happening so fast. It's like
Mhm.
we were living slow lives. And so when I think about like caregiving, like something that I used to really struggle with when I'll say I was maybe in my first year of parenting. Like before parenting, I was very sure, like, yep, I'm going to stay home with my child and all these things, right? But once I was living it, I was having all of these like doubts and thoughts that like maybe this ain't it. And it wasn't because my desires changed. It was truly because I wasn't living in a system that supported that slow pace.
Yeah.
Me being home with my child required for me to be slow in making money because I'm not out,
Mm.
making money. I hadn't cracked the code. I didn't have an online business. I wasn't raking it in. So I was truly like saying, okay, well, my energy is not going into like how I can replace my salary at this time. I'm thinking about nurturing my child and being present for every little step and being present for myself and my inner child. But this system of like, you need money for everything was not really supporting me. And then also being inside of like a household where if I'm doing that, then my partner is like earning the money and all of what that brings up when like those roles get divided. And I'm like, this feels hard. I don't think that we were meant to like struggle like this on our own. Again, the system not supporting moving at a slow pace. It's about everybody in their job, make their money, fulfill these roles, and just keep it moving. There's no time for slowing down. I remember after I had alchemy, um, because like I didn't get this when Kavi was born, but when Alchemy was born, Kit was able to have like maybe 8 weeks off or something, and that was great. And I just remember feeling such grief when he had to go back to work. Like you would think somebody died because I already went through like postpartum time with one child, so I knew what that felt like to be, kind of isolated. So when he had to go back to work, I remember feeling like just immense grief. Like, oh my goodness, like the world, the powers that be are like taking away from me, because I want the support with this toddler and this new baby. And I'm just like, something is real off about it, because when you really kind of just trace it back, it's like if you choose slowness, then you don't get rewarded. And that's why we do, you know, we are robots because we're taking on more than we can handle, because being productive means that you get rewards. And who wants to be without in this structure? So, yeah, I don't even know how I started talking about that, but it felt important to say because I feel like a lot of how we move in this world um, are results of not having enough people divest from this current model of how we care for ourselves,
Mhm.
but care for our children, which is another reason why we even kind of co-created and founded the Tribe Learning Co-op, where we're like, okay, we got to figure something else out. We have to find ways to divest from all the options that we were told were our only options and
Mm.
create a new option. And now I would like to say, like post COVID kind of popping up on the scene, like so many people are starting to look at the ways that they show up in community and care for their children and educate their children so differently. So it can happen fast. It just, we got to do it. We got to do the work.
Yeah, for sure. One of the things that popped up in my mind while you were talking was how we see so much information so quickly, and like maybe our human brains or human cells has not caught up to like the processing speed of like a machine, like a computer, and how we download so much of that information. But when do we empty the trash? So when you download things to your computer, there is to be a time that you're going to need to empty the trash, empty the cache. Like you have to do that type of clean sweep. Otherwise, your system starts to process a lot slower. And then you're subject to viruses, right?
Mm.
Because you're not able to put more energy into protecting yourself because you're putting a lot of energy into constantly just taking in information. And what are you doing with all the information besides
Mm-hmm.
consuming? So back at it again, we're talking about consumerism, right? Now we're just paying into that. But that does feel misaligned because what are you doing with that energy? How is that being like transferred to something else? And so in my mind, I was thinking of why it's so important, at least for our children and for ourselves, obviously, but for our children to start them young with like detoxing their minds. And that could look like body and breath work, doing yoga and making that very, very much a ceremony, making it very much so a ritual. This is what we do every day. Like you get up and brush your teeth every day. You get up and you go and ground yourself into the earth. Or you get up and you go and you meditate. And you get up and you get some sunlight. You need at least 20, 30 minutes of sunlight every day hitting your skin. Okay, like these are the things that we need to be human. Just like you need to drink water, we need this. And if you're going to play in virtual reality and you're going to play with AI, you need to make sure that you have more balance. You need to be more on the scale of humanizing yourself.
Yep.
Because we weren't meant to be robots. So, yeah.
Yeah, I felt like I was in church. I don't even go to church. But I feel like I was in church when you said that. I was like, yes, yes. The whole like you become more susceptible to attack, to virus when you don't fortify. And and I think like one of the things like that really affirms a practice that I have in my household is that every Wednesday it's just a rest day in the middle of the week. Like it's our family day. We take it easy. We have nourishing food, or either we treat ourselves and, do something fun. But it's like, to me, it's like a big kick in the systems behind of like, I don't feel that feeling of like, all right, halfway through the week. I feel like this is rest day, so I get to feel that like weekend feeling in the middle of the week, right when I need it. Well, it's been hard though, because there are things that happen on Wednesdays that like I want to be a part of, and then I missed out. And then I have to like, it's like a meditation. I have to tell myself, like, you carved this out because the world is always going to be happening. There's always going to be something that you want to be a part of, even if it's something that's like nourishing. There's still value in you being able to take the time to just pause and say, no matter what it is, no matter the quality of it, I get to choose to not have anything extra coming in right now. And to me, that's like a big decolonization practice that we started back when we were in Chicago, but I feel like more heavily now that we've been here in the South, things are just a little slower. The weather is always pretty beautiful. So it's easier to just kind of like take pause. And I wanted to just look, there's a comment in our Instagram. I wanted to read it and talk a little bit about it. She said, I think that we seek advice from professionals. This is back a few topics because we don't have the community to teach us. Like animals learn behavior from their herd or pack, etc. And I just wanted to like highlight that because I'll speak from my own experience of what it has felt like to be a part of the Tribe Learning Co-op, and just say that like before we started connecting and having our children play together and caring for each other, I was in an intentional community of sorts, and it was hella imbalanced because it was more transactional than not. And I don't think that any of us could foresee that that would be an issue. So we were calling it community because it felt like it. We made the choice. We thought it was great. We're like, okay, well, you need this and you need that, and let's put those needs together. And it was like a necessary step. But we really didn't have mentorship and what it was going to be like to be in a position where, you know, our identities were intersecting and clashing, to be in a position to know what the needs of postpartum mothers were going to be like fully. Like, I was a birth worker, but I would say I really didn't start like delving into the postpartum aspect of birth until I experienced my own like pretty horrific postpartum, you know, because it was like, oh, birth, glorious, you know, full of ease and magic and yes, you know. But then it's like the part that I overlooked because I didn't have mentorship. So fast forward, connecting to the Tribe Learning Co-op was like, I don't think that any of us, maybe like each of us had access to something, but I don't think any of us had access to all of it. Like all of the mentorship and community that was going to respect our wishes around diet for our children, that was going to honor, you know, whatever choices we made around parenting, around birthing, around homeschooling, and, you know, not enrolling in school, not taking our kids to, you know, be routinely vaccinated, or just not doing all the things. So maybe we were feeling like unicorns in some ways, but then once we kind of got together and just start talking about, you know, where we were at and what our needs were, I feel like that's where the community started, and it started getting the juices flowing to the point that I feel very confident now that even just being in that practice of gathering with people that you do not know, you know, like that, at least in like, you know, I'll say traumatized communities, like that's a, you know, if I don't know you, I can't trust you. I really don't know. Like I have to protect me and mine. But I feel like something that is a true decolonization practice, especially around care, is to be gathering with people that you don't really know that well, to see what's possible, to see what can emerge. And you might find nothing. Like there's nothing for me here. And that's cool because at least you know, you don't have to wonder. And you're clear that my needs can be met here, but you are clear
Right.
that you have needs and they do need to be met. So now that kind of fortifies you and gives you practice to move on to the next space, the next people, you know. And I think that I always say I'm just so grateful for the fact that we got to practice that
Mm.
because, you know, even like with me having moved, like I've been able to connect to community here. And I don't think that I would have had like the get up and get it, or like the endurance or even fortitude to do that if I hadn't
Mhm.
had a good experience after, you know, a not so great experience. Um, because I don't know, I don't really want to like dispose of any of my connections, even though, you know, it's human, like we do have to at times.
Yes.
But it was very sad to see that these good intentions didn't actually turn out to be fruitful with my first intentional community. And then for after having the practice in the Tribe Learning Co-op, it's like, okay, like we can do something. We can build something together. We can find relief, you know, to take care of ourselves. We can care for
Mhm.
each other's children. We can get pregnant and not even have to worry about like any care because you know that it's handled here. Like
Right.
it's the wisdom of the group. You like, okay, great. I'm pregnant. This is what's going on. This is about the time I'm gonna have a baby. Yeah, give or take. You know, I want y'all to be there. And I feel like that is powerful. And so to that comment, I just feel inclined to say, yes, I agree with that sentiment. We go to professionals um, because we don't have anything else. And this conversation is important to have because as we talk about decolonizing, it's not to say that anything professional is bad. Like, people are good at what they do, but divesting from that being the way and just a way, like
Right.
the way could very well be saying, if I don't have the community, like, we do have these tools like the internet. Like, when I was having my first pregnancy, as you say, a wild pregnancy, like, I was able to see this woman that I don't even know, but I was on Instagram and I saw her, like, just, she was poor. She was like, I don't have money to go here or do whatever, so I'm just gonna have a baby. I was like, oh, bet. For me, I was like it was just so simple. And I was like, I always knew I wanted like a birth at home, and I wanted to like have my baby and be in a pool and these things that were kind of surface, but I never really thought about how it was going to happen. But seeing that, and this was before I was pregnant, so just seeing that image stuck in my mind, like, that's not even my community, but I had access to something else. And so
Right.
there are so many ways that you can become tapped in. And I can't stress enough that something that I think we have learned, I don't think that this is innate. We have learned to be separate. And I don't
Yes.
think that's innate to us. I know that when I'm in my little isolation mode, it's because of like, lack of motivation, shame, lack of trust, trauma. It's never because I'm feeling like my absolute best self, And so,
Right.
yeah, because when you do, then you like, yeah, where the party at? Like, let's
You
celebrate.
want to
Let's
share it.
yes,
You want to share that energy. Yes. I do the same thing.
yes,
I'll jump on the phone real quick. Just, what you doing? I was thinking about this today. And I'm just chatty Cathy because I'm trying to share that love and energy that I'm
yes.
experiencing. Yes.
Yes. And I feel like that is innate. And that's like taking off those layers to decolonize the ways that we've learned to even show up. Like all of this distrust that we have, between genders and races and women, and like these things are not innate to us. Like, this is not our um this doesn't belong to us. It's not ours.
Yeah.
And so a part of shedding and putting it down is to do something like just gather with people, just because, where you're like, we got kids, let's just see what happens. Sit back and see how the kids are. Pretty soon you'll start talking. Pretty soon you'll discover like, oh, you don't do this either, or you do this, and I think that is something, like, I don't know, the family get together vibe, like the family barbecue vibe, where people just get together no matter how you're feeling, no matter, even if you don't feel like you're just like gleaming with joy, but having that container of people to hold you even when you're not feeling your best, and to affirm that, like, yeah, you do need rest or you do need care, is so important. So I just wanted to like uplift that comment because like I've been there. I visit that place often, especially when it comes to like ancestral kind of practices. Like, I don't really feel like I've landed in a place to know, like, this is where my ancestors are from. These are our traditions. These are our ways. I feel like I'm kind of like floating sometimes. And, I'm not trying to appropriate nobody's culture. I'm not trying to be completely absent of culture, but my lived experience is one where, like, hell, I was adopted and I don't know. I don't know. So I have to literally feel my way through it and just feel my way to connecting to things that resonate. And a part of that is to step outside of this protective shell that tells me that, we don't gather. Like, no, that's all we used to do.
Yes.
That's all we used to do. And so, to her point, she said, like animals, they have like their pack or their herd. Yes, we are animals. Let's not forget. Or either aliens, one of the two. But we're not supposed to be doing this alone. And I think if nothing else comes out of this conversation today, I feel like I want to uplift that. Like, this work of care is not just for you. Like, it's for all of us. And thank you for that comment, because to me, what that says is like, yeah, well, there are people that are looking. And so sometimes you just got to put that call out, and see who answers.
That is so So true. Yes, thank you for that comment. I was thinking when you first read it, I was thinking about how not only are we just animals, because, and correct me if I'm wrong, y'all, I don't have a degree in zoology, biology, any of that. Okay, anthropology, but mammals are the ones who gather in those kinds of ways, right? And they learn through the other herd's behaviors. Reptiles and amphibians and other, classifications are the ones that, okay, boom, I had this baby and you got to get out how you live. See you later, and then that's how they pass on their DNA. So they are like less attached to the seed, and which is why they have so many at a time. We can only carry and nurture one at a time, gestationally. And then we have to nurture it even beyond birthing it for a year or two or three or four.
25.
Right, hello. And until both the parents and the seed can say, okay, you know what, I'm comfortable enough. I'm comfortable enough to let you go, and I'm comfortable enough to leave. And so, that was just something that just came to my mind. So, we do learn from others and their behaviors. I would highly encourage us to be discerning about who we're learning from, because everybody who calls themselves a professional is not worthy of taking professional advice from. I mean, we are all professionals of some sort. And so when you're in the mode of seeking information that is going to fortify you, that is going to motivate you and like add arsenal to your bag so that you can live and so that you can pass that information and that wisdom down to your seeds, make sure that whoever you're taking this advice from, first of all, make sure that they're invested into you. And it's not just you being invested into them or their profession. And I think that when we look at it from a lens of this has to be a mutually beneficial relationship, that can like lead us on a better path than just something that's very transactional, where we just give away our powers to somebody who has a name tag or who has a couple of, letters behind their name. Not to downplay the work that they've gone through, because there is wisdom in what they've experienced and what they've learned. But is that wisdom for you? We all come from different cultures and backgrounds. And so the ways that my Southern grandmothers practice and do things is going to be different than someone from the Nordic region. And it may be different because my lineage, my bloodline, my DNA is more programmed to that land, to that area, to that environment versus over here. So I might not be able to, I don't know, whatever these other people are doing. I might not be able to do it that way. I might need to get with somebody who's doing things in the ways of my ancestors or my lineage or the people from the land that I came from or that I've been residing in, or the generations that have come before me have been residing in for so long. So I was just that was something that I just wanted to throw out there, because I know it's scary. It's scary to hold all of the power. Number one, okay? With great power comes great responsibility. And so it feels good to say, man, I can't do all of this by myself. And we are interdependent beings. So you're not made to do it all by yourself. But I want to just make sure I make a point that it's scary to hold all the power, meaning you have it already. You're born with it. Be very discerning about who you give some of that to, and make sure that they are very well invested into you. So like Shanika, you and I were talking, day before yesterday, and we were talking about like midwives, family physicians, and how, like you said, now people is very assembly line like, just like the public education system, very much so assembly line. Back then, in those times, it was very much community based. You might have had one midwife that served a county, or she served these families, but it wasn't just you didn't just call her for helping guide you during childbirth. She was a healer when your babies were sick, when you were sick, and when it was time to transition back to the essence. She was there. She was holding hands for many different periods of time. She was a part of the family.
Mm-hmm.
And so,
Generationally too. So it wasn't just
yes,
you and your babies. It was probably you. She was there for your birth, and she was probably there for your mama's, maybe. You know.
right. And she gonna be there for your baby's birth. So this person is well invested. Not only do you know that she knows that she's competent in what she's doing, you know her. You know her values. You know her beliefs.
Yeah.
You know, you all eat from the same types of food. You live in the same region. So you experience the same environmental changes and differences. You are more connected in more ways than one. So I think when you start seeking, that's a good avenue to kind of explore, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And like, if you find yourself in a position where you are seeking some level of support, and you find that you land on any guide, professional or otherwise, I feel like a good like litmus, if you will, litmus test for if this person is like the right one for you is, assuming they're a stranger, is to really pay attention to like what are the questions that they're asking you about yourself, and how do you feel about the questions, and what does it inspire in you? Like, are you reflecting? So if you come to someone and you're like, oh, I've been having like nausea or whatever, and I get dizzy, and you go to like this nutritionist or this like functional medicine doctor or whatever, and you share that, and the first thing that they're doing is prescribing you supplements, it's probably not the one, you know? But even if they have all these great Google reviews, and even if they really are smart and they know what they're talking about, um, it's probably not, because they don't know anything about you. They just know about the work that they do, and they know about all the people that they've served as a collective. But if somebody starts asking you things about like how you feel, where's your emotional state, what's happening in your life right now, do you have trouble having bowel movements, what's your period like if they start asking you things about you to get to know you, you probably can trust that even if they don't have like the answers, they're going to be a great guide for you finding them, because they are starting to get invested in you outside of like your ailment or your diagnoses or the thing, whatever brings you to this place of needing support. And not even just like in the like health and wellness realm, but period. Like if you need support in anything, if like advice is all that somebody has to offer, like that's cool. And it actually might be good for you, maybe, but it's not going to be good for everybody. So to be able to ask some questions of you, and just kind of get grounded in what it is that you uniquely need, that's probably going to be a good guide. So, in your pursuit, meeting with people that you don't know, and just kind of gathering, I think like questions and curiosity is a great way to see like what's resonant, and like can we make magic together, or can we not? And it's okay if you can't. Maybe you can make magic with somebody else and so can they, but y'all not supposed to, at least not right now. um but yeah, I was thinking about when you were talking, I was thinking about, about like the elder caring for the community, and why I feel like maybe that's not the case today, is because of liability. This is essentially a result of like professionalizing a lot of things, a lot of our
Yeah.
mammalian kind of functions and things.
Yep.
And we had a really good conversation about, like liability as it pertains to birth, as it pertains to childcare, and basically like nobody wants the responsibility, nobody wants the blood on their hands, so to speak. And that's why when you were talking, Kaya, about like having all of that responsibility and authority for yourself, sometimes that feels scary because the liability technically is on you. And I don't think that it's as popular for people to outright admit this, but it feels more comfortable sometimes to blame somebody else if something goes wrong, especially when
Oh,
you're
yeah.
growing up in like perfectionism culture. You don't want to be the one who makes the wrong choice for your career, for your child, for your birth, for your body. You don't want to buy the
Yes.
wrong house. You don't want to mess up. You trying to grow a garden for the first time, but you want to Google all the things because you want to make sure you do it right. Like we don't live in a society that supports us in just like moving slowly and finding our way. So
Yeah.
we want to like completely go on the fast lane, and a part of the fast lane, it takes away the liability for us, even though you'll still suffer the consequence, but you could blame
Hmm.
somebody else. And I
Yep.
see this happen a lot in birth. I see it happen in education a lot, um, in all sorts of relationships
Hmm.
where there's like some exchange of service. It's so much easier to blame somebody else than it is to do it on your own. And like, this is not a systemic thing, but it's like a perfect example to just kind of bring it on home. Is Kit always, I think that he like drives in a way that is not conducive to survival. I'll say that. So I'm always like, oh, why'd you do that? Like I'm holding on to, the little thing on the
Yeah.
on the car. And you're
Yeah.
like, what's this for? Clearly it's when you're driving with Kit. So like I'm holding on to the thing and I'm like, like making all sorts of sound effects in the car and deep breathing in the passenger seat. And he'll be like, do you want to drive? I'm like, no, I just don't want you to kill me. And so he's always like, yeah, you got so much to say about how I'm driving, but you don't ever want to drive. And so, granted, this is not like a dynamic of like power and privilege and,
Right.
systems that have us colonized per se, but this was a perfect way to kind of just bring it home for me to just be like, sometimes it's these small ways in our everyday life that
Yeah.
we have this type of mentality. So, of course, it carries over into the biggest,
Mm.
most important decisions. Like nobody wants for their child to die, but if that happened during birth or under the care of someone else or while they're at school, or nobody wants their child to not know how to like do basic things. It's like,
Right.
but you can blame the school system because they were responsible for it. Or you could blame the people who were giving you care during your birth because they were the professionals who were responsible.
Yeah.
And it feels better when you're going through grief and like a tough time to blame
Hmm.
somebody else. It just, I don't know what that is, but it feels better until
Yeah.
you get into like that deep work of taking true ownership and responsibility.
Yep.
And that is like that level of autonomy is what allows for sovereignty. And that is,
Yes.
I think, what we talk about when we say decolonizing care. It's not just, trying different practices, but on a foundational level, recognizing that, yes, we are doing things interdependently. And also things that happen with you and your body and all the fruits that come from you, like you have that authority. And if something happens that's quote unquote, wrong, or I wouldn't even like use that language, to be honest,
Right.
but the ways that we have kind of learned about like right and wrong and what have you, like if you do something that happens not to your liking or what you didn't prefer,
Hmm.
then to say like, hmm, that probably came from me doing this and not this, or you know it's something that I actually can reflect on and say that this is how I contributed to it, or to say I really don't even know how this happened, and to truly surrender and like give it up
Mm.
to like divine consciousness. That is hard. That is really hard,
Hmm.
even for the most like religious spiritual people. That is really really hard to just like allow it to be in the void, because then you
Yes.
don't have control. You don't get to
Mm.
control and manipulate it. You just have to be in it and receive and let it like move through you. And
Yep.
culturally, we are so out of practice with being receptive beings. We don't know how to receive.
Yes.
And think about the culture of care, it's like care is a give and receive type of dynamic. It's not just the
Hmm.
give, and it's not just receiving all the time. So if our whole culture is just like completely out of practice with receiving, then of course we're going to be out of practice with giving care, providing care, because we don't know how to receive. We don't even know how to receive like the responsibility for ourselves, keeping ourselves. We don't know how to receive the responsibility for like feeding ourselves. Like there are all of these ways. And again, I'm in the we group. Like I'm not growing all my food, I'm going to the grocery store. You know what I mean? But this is just like the system that we are a part of. And if we start just little by little, whether that be through birthing, whether that be through growing your food, whether that be through gathering with strangers, you know, going against all of these ways that this system has told us that we have to be, to produce some different outcome where we can be more autonomous and sovereign in the way that we live our lives, but also be more interconnected with each other and not the system, not with the professionalization. That was a lot. Let me see if anybody's saying anything.
While you check on that, I just wanted to add on. Ooh, that was a lot. It was. And I'm just trying to like get back into my memory to figure out everything that I wanted to say. It feels good to share I don't even want to say blame. I don't want to say blame, but it feels good to share the responsibility because we're not in practice of holding all that responsibility ourselves. I mean, you think about it. We just talked about conception. Most of us were born into the practice of giving part of that responsibility of even being birthed to somebody else. You weren't even born sovereign, I guess, you know, like in essence you were, but from the moment that someone else held part of that birthing power was the moment that, you know, your sovereignty escaped. And that's not to shame or blame anybody. It's just what it is. So we're not in practice of that. We're not in practice of actually listening to things without feeling shame. And I think that that's because we feel so much shame. Nobody wants to feel that. No one wants to feel bad. So when the facts are being presented or the truth is right there in front of you, you don't want to hear it because, I mean, it makes you, it triggers a sort of shame in you that is deep. It might be generational, you know, so.
Not enoughness.
Yeah. So that was something that I thought of. And also the one thing that backs all of this, that makes it okay to like put the blame or the responsibility on somebody else, is the litigious society that we live in. America is one of the most, it is one of the largest societies of lawyers. We have a system where you not only can I put the blame on somebody else, the responsibility or the fault on someone else, I can actually make them pay me for damages as well. And I think like, that's like a double-edged sword, because you can't want the power and say, you know, like, this is my body and I can do what I want to do with it. But then when the consequence comes from whatever that may be, you don't want to hold it. You want to give it to somebody else. And you want to make them pay for it when you ask them to come into this power. So this is like COSIS that I'm talking about. It's the computers, y'all. Get up off of the internet. Get off the computers. I'm just playing, but no. I mean, it might be. I don't know. But I'm just saying, like, in truth, whatever, it's because we're not living in community with each other, and we're not in practice of like accepting the cycles of things. Life, death, it's a cycle. When I talk to my kids now, I talk death like I'm talking about life. My daughter's like, when she's watching a show or something, which I don't like to really expose her to things that are like really violent, but if she catches something, she's like, oh, he has a lot of blood on his shirt, help him, or something. Or she might like, what happened? He died? I'm like, yeah. She's like, he went back to the essence? Yeah, he gone. She's like, wow. And then like even last night we were watching something and she was just like, I want to go back to the essence. And like the first trigger in my mind was like, don't say that. Like, but then I just waited a minute and I was just like, you've been already. You're here now and you're here to do a job and to live and have an experience. So enjoy it while you're here. Because when you go, you go.
Yes.
And she's like, okay. And when start playing. I don't want you to fear death or what comes behind it. It's coming anyway. So, you know, and that's something that I thought of when I was like pregnant with my son and we were having our birth meetings. You know, you remember I had that meeting and all my doulas was on the line and my husband, and I'm like, this is what happens. If I hemorrhage, this is what happens. This is what I want to happen. If I die, this is what I want to happen. This is the person I want to care for my son. This is the person who's going to feed my son. He is, you know, I want him to still be breastfed. And, or, you know, we had our contingency plan. And I was very much so comfortable with the thought of what was to happen. If my son was to pass, that was something that we had to discuss. Conversations are not easy, you know, but they need to be had. They have to be had. And I think the more you can like plan on like what you may do, because some things are just for the moment, but the more that you can plan or prepare yourself, is really just preparing your mind for what may come, then you may experience less shame and you can probably get through that grief cycle a lot easier versus being stuck in the blame part or stuck in the angry part or whatever. So, yeah.
Thank you for bringing that in, because two things came up. One, the concept of impermanence and how we are not very intimate with that in our like modern human society, because almost everything that we do is about like being here forever. You know, like everything that we do is like staying young looking, making sure that you have all of this money to do all the things. It's like mass hoarding. You hoarding life, you hoarding youth, you hoarding resources, everything, and not honoring those seasons and those cycles. So that came up. It's like one of probably the biggest colonial and capitalist like illusions that we're under. And then also like this idea of ritual and ceremony. So you talked about it in the like planning for or like knowing what to expect. But I think, you know, put differently, like essentially that's ritual and ceremony. Like we know what to expect for birthday parties. Nobody's getting anxious about somebody turning a new age.
Right.
Because we know what to do. This society allows us to like truly have ritual and ceremony around what it means to honor a first birthday or a 21st birthday or, you know, whatever it is. And then in your unique cultures, it's like, okay, your 7th birthday, your 13th, and, you know, whatever. So yeah, when things are unfamiliar and not in practice, if the only way you know about like something terrible happening like death, if the only thing you know is that people are unprepared, not ready to accept it, and it's chaos, then that's what it's going to be. You know, like I don't think that anyone's going to be leaping for the moon about losing a loved one. And I don't think that that's like what this conversation is about. It's accepting that we are all going to have our time. We're not going to know when that time is going to be unless we're choosing it for ourselves and doing something about it. But we're not going to know when our parents or our siblings or our children or our grandchildren are going to transition. And so instead of avoiding it, or like you said, the example with India, like the first thing wanted to be like, don't say that, don't speak that, you know, of just like, let's just see where that goes, because we don't need to put a value judgment on what it means to not be living. Like we pay homage to people who are not living and we learn from people who are not living. And, you know, our gardens show us the power of what's not living and how it goes back to the earth to like bring something else forth. So to not like put that negative judgment on something that we don't understand, but put the energy into actually creating ritual and ceremony around it. And so, like you said, when you were thinking about these are some possibilities, you know, they're less likely, but they could happen. with your birth. They could happen. So let us develop what those rituals are going to be. You're going to breastfeed my child, you know, and I'm going to be able to get milk from these other people because he's going to be needing this for at least a year.
Yes.
So let's develop the rituals. And, you know, this is how I want things to go. And let us already be grounded in something, because now I'm pretty sure, you know, all of us who are present there, we can take what we did at this one birth, we can take that to the next.
Yes.
In our, you know, it's like a tree that happened here, but all of us that were present will go to other births and we'll be a part of other conversations, and we can bring that same level of intentionality and ceremony to talking about something uncomfortable, so that there are those rituals set in place. And I feel like that is what allows for us to be able to be here, you know, and all of the complexity, the good and the bad. And that's something that we lack, because that takes time, that takes slowness, that takes care and intentionality. Again, all these things that we we don't have the spaciousness for, because they aren't prioritized unless we do that decolonizing work of saying, no, I'm going to give this priority and I'm going to take responsibility. You know, they're not going to do all of this for you if you have a loss in the hospital. You're going to have to get that care outside of it, you know? So I'm grateful that people are starting to like make these communities available for people, for like things that are just less popular. You know, I feel like, you know, farming and stuff is becoming more popular now, but it took for food to be scarce. You know, it took for us to go all the way to the other side with not having the resource for it to increase popularity, but specifically like farming amongst communities of color. When it's like so bizarre that we even have to learn this, to remember this.
We came from, there you go, to remember this, because most of us who are indigenous to America were the farmers. Okay.
Anywhere, like before modernization, like everybody had to eat. So everybody knew how to grow the crops of their area. And I feel like having to remember something like that always humbles me, because it's like, whew, like I'm very disconnected to being a human, or like even walking outside barefoot. Like there's just so many ways that like our humanity has not been honored in the ways that we need to show up in this current iteration of like society. But to remember some of these more primal, innate parts of how we got along and how we were in relationship to each other and the land, I feel like are going to be key in us truly decolonizing, like care. Because care is not just of like each other and, you know, our kids, but it's also like this planet that we're on. You know, we're a part of a larger system. Like we're just a little piece in it. And I know that like the like power structure now will have humans like sitting at the top, you know, like we're the most important, when that's not true, because like we don't eat each other. I mean, it's possible, but that's not how we're getting our nourishment. Like there's obviously all of this water. This planet, way bigger than us, is majority water. Like clearly that's really important. In the land and the ways that we care for this planet or not, I feel like are so reflected in just our culture of care. We don't really care for this planet. We don't have to. And even the people who are like cleaning up, you know, like, oh yeah, let's clean up the lake, or let's do this. It's like, but are we also putting that same energy into like growing the food that we eat? Because we get to be so disconnected where, yeah, we got a few people growing it and, you know, taking care of the land, planting the seeds, harvesting the food, and then getting it to us to the point that we waste a lot. Like we waste a lot. Like there are legit veggies that just go bad in my fridge. And I'm like, wow, like that, if I was picking straight from my bush or whatever, like that's not going to happen because I'm not like hoarding this stuff in my refrigerator. But also like the mindfulness that is necessary to like plan to eat this food is
Yep.
not there. And I used to feel like really shameful, but now I'm just recognizing that this is just a part of something larger. So
Mm-hmm.
I can offer my mindfulness to it. And instead of trying to save time and go to the grocery
Mm-hmm.
store once a week, now I'm going 3 times a week because I only want to buy what I'm about to eat. And yes,
Yes.
like that takes a little more extra time and energy, but I think it's worth it. And then I get into the dilemma of like, well, I'm using more gas to go to the store. But I feel like there's no perfect way until we can reconnect with how all of these ways of care work together, because they truly do.
I want to add on. You see, I'm writing I had to make notes. Let me tell y'all, this season that I'm in right now, it makes my brain a little slower, but that's intentional because my brain
Cozy
does need.
season.
Yes, it's the cozy season, so I need to think less and to be a little slower so that my body can go ahead and do what it needs to do. I needed to write down these notes because otherwise I'm going to forget. So when you were talking, it made me think about how you said, like, if your veggies go bad, in your fridge and stuff. It made me think about composting. You know, these are ways to recycle some of that and to make it to where that energy isn't just wasted,
Mm.
because it could go right back to the earth. And that's an easy way to care for the land. Composting is really not that difficult. I actually have my own compost bin in my garden, and maybe one day I'll show it. But it's so easy. And then you were saying, like, if you had to pick from your tree or from your bush or whatever, like pick your food. It made me think of how, think about it like this. And I don't know what era this was or what generation this was, but I want to say it's maybe my great grandmother, who would be like maybe 120 or 30 right now if she was still in this realm. Where they had like ice boxes, and they had like, or they used like the cold stream to like preserve their food. And there were less food preservation techniques because we were living more off the land, and what you picked for the day is what you ate for the day. So this idea of hoarding food and hoarding the resource to maybe save time, because you delegate time to something else, to go to a job or to whatever the case is. But this idea of hoarding food was not so much because you need to pick things fresh, and you were healthier because you were picking it fresh. You were getting those nutrients right away. Right. So no wonder why they live so long. But now we have bigger is better. America, the bigger, the stronger. These are like some of the attributes that we've given this country. And if you think about how, and I have not been to Europe, so if anybody's watching and they you can correct me if I'm wrong, but from what I've heard from people who have visited Europe, France in particular, their appliances are small, specifically like their refrigerators, much smaller than America. And if you notice, like our commercials, we get bigger refrigerators every year, bigger TVs, bigger stoves. Now you can program your stove to cut on and preheat right from your bed. Y'all, I'm telling you this with this technology. I'm like, that's nice. So then what, a hacker could hack in and blow your damn house up or something? Like, come on now. Don't be foolish.
Oh my goodness.
Like, you have to be as pessimistic as I am. But I'm just saying.
No, I'm with you. My mind be going there too.
I'm like, so what? We got a big fridge to do what? Spend a lot of money to go buy a lot of food that you can't even eat in this small window of time, because it's going to decompose, which is what it's supposed to do. And you're being bombarded by all the marketing that's telling you, eat this and eat that, and this will be yummy on your plate, and this only takes 5 minutes to cook or whatever, or we're open late, or what all so now you're hungry for that, and you got food that's decomposing in your fridge, a lot of food that's decomposing in your fridge, and the that supported all this was the currency of your dollar, your money, which was backed by your physical labor or maybe your mental labor, whatever, but it could have been actually into your garden or maybe into somebody else's garden, maybe into a CSA or a food club or something like that or whatever. You could have been like stretching your dollars and your energy and putting it towards something that was more invested into you and less invested into consumerism.
Right. Just
so that's
like
just right, just privately. And so that was just kind of like, that's the rabbit hole I went down when you were like, talking about that. And then it made me think like, bring all in care and caregiving for the land and for nature. We are nature. And so how can you care for the land and care for nature without possessing it? That's key. Because I know a lot of us as indigenous folks are talking about like, man, we used to be this and we used to be that, whatever, and shoot, I want to get back down south and own some land. I've even said it before. Like, you want to get back somewhere and own some land. And then you look at the price of land and how much it costs, the acres on acres on acres. And you don't need a lot of acres to live, but it's not cheap, it's
right.
Which, I mean, how far you want to go? Because we got a tribe member who, they didn't drove somewhere and start planting on some land. And is it theirs? I mean, what's possession?
Right.
If you know what I'm saying, what does that even mean? Like, now we're gonna get into definitions and all of that, but
right.
I'm just
the
saying,
land belongs to who's taking care of it. At least, that's what Native Americans have taught us.
Exactly.
That's their land because they cared for it before anybody was here. So I feel like if you take care of land, that's your land. Yeah. To care for, not to consume and hoard, but to care for and to share.
To care for. Yeah. And it made me think about that the apple orchard experience that you had. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yes. Oh man, I went to a beautiful orchard, probably the most beautiful one I've ever been to. It was in the mountains, and I just went last week. I went with my children and the learning center that we're a part of, and it was just like fun time, vibe. Everything about it was just beautiful, except the waste. There were so many apples on the ground, like some of which looked like maybe they had naturally fallen, maybe like 10%. But the majority were ones that people picked and was like, meh, chuck it. Some of them were smushed because people were like tripping over them, because I couldn't walk anywhere like between the rows in the orchard of the trees. I couldn't walk anywhere without my ankles just rolling. Like, I'm talking about, I knew I was going to leave up out of there on a stretcher because it was so many apples. And so I'm like, there's a lot of apples. Some people just had a heavy foot and smashed them, so they were smashed. Some of them had a little kid took a bite and tossed the apple. Like, yeah, I don't want that. And so I was just like, wow. So me and a few of the other adults there were just like, I just feel like we should do something, but I don't know what to do. And one of them talks about their experience with an orchard that was connected to a farm, which now that I think back, I think this one kind of is too. They had some animals at least, but it was connected to a farm. And for people to come and pick apples for themselves and their families, they charged a very like low price. Typically orchard is like you have an admission, and then you have like a per pound for your apples or whatever. But this one that they were talking about was you just pay to come pick the apples, one price, and you go pick the apples. Obviously, don't try to get as much as you can for a little bit of money. Get what you can eat or what you're going to use, to make whatever you're going to make. Share with your community, but 50% of what you pick has to go back to the farm. So if you pick 100 apples, 50 of those apples go back to the farm for the people who work the land, for the people who live there, for the animals on the farm. So that includes, so it's not like you got to pick another 50 off of a tree. That can include the apples that have been wasted. So if you do the cleanup work of, let me pick up these 50 apples on the ground and let them know these were on the ground. They can sift through. If some are salvageable, they can have them for food, or they can give them to the animals, because the animals are not going to care as much as we would about, an apple with one little small rotten piece because somebody bit it, or, because it fell from the tree a few days ago. And so I was like, wow, like that to me is like the epitome of like sustainability and like being in true connection, because I always like look up to people who operate off of an honor system.
Yes.
And I think it's so hard when you live in a culture where people are trying to get the most for doing the littlest. Like, I'm trying to do least amount, pay the least amount, let me get the dollar store bundle. Let me pay 99 cents for 100 pack. Like, that is the culture. And so I can just imagine a whole bunch of people with that mentality going to this orchard and being like, everybody bring trash bags, bring the wagon, like, let's get all these apples. And how many of those apples are actually going to be consumed and used for compost or what have you? Probably not all of them, because you're so focused on getting a lot because of just the scarcity mindset that you're not even being intentional about what these apples can go towards. So I feel like that is one thing that I like aspire towards, is like being truly intimate with like the honor system, and being like, here, you pay, because we did do labor here. So you pay your $10 or whatever. You get however many apples you think you need to do whatever you gonna do. Half of them though, like, or you can do the intentional work of getting, double the amount. Put that back. Like, if they looking too nasty, let's throw that in the compost. If they look just like imperfect, you don't want them, let's give them to the animals. And if you want to do a service, we got kids on this farm. We want to eat too. Like, pick our apples for us, And I just feel like that, I don't know, I just melted. Like, but then like I got snapped back into this sobering reality that like, that's not where we were. That's not where we were. And I'm still tripping over apples, like rolling my ankles and whatnot. But I was just so appreciative for her sharing that, because it just inspired me for whenever it is that I'll have access to work somebody's land or have land of my own, or just ways that I don't have to be in like this hoarding relationship, which is so easy, especially when you come from like not having. Then you're all trying to get your nest together, and like, oh no, competitors, or people who are not a part of this family, like, no, this is for us. Like, that type of energy can come through. Even like you put a lot of energy and work into something, you like, we did this, like, so. And I don't think that that's like innate, but it comes from scarcity and it comes from trauma. And I think being able to push past it, like, it does inspire something different. So when I go places like that, or like something is sliding scale, or they're like, yeah, this is our garden, we do have a store, but this section is for the community, it inspires me to be like, you know what? I'm volunteering once a week because I eat good from here. So I'm coming here and I'm putting my hours in. I'm putting my labor and my sweat and tears into this garden. And I feel like I would like to cultivate that if I was ever blessed with land of my own to care for. It's like I don't have to bring that traumatized lineage with me. I can reach even further back in the lineage of where we were like, oh, the earth provides, so we can too. And like, there is no such thing as not enough, because we can just plant more seeds, So yeah, it was just so beautiful. And to me, that was just like a really good example of like how to like decolonize care as it relates to caring for the land and each other.
Yeah. Yes. That made me think about my garden. I told you the story before about how it's nature. We got squirrels and birds and other little creatures that are frolicking around and looking for food. And when I first planted my garden at my current and new home, I was so excited because I've been wanting this for a long time. I had been renting plots from like family members and then from another farm to grow food. and it was just a lot of labor of trying to travel to get there. But now that I got my own, I can just walk down my stairs and go outside in the backyard and pick my herbs and my tomatoes and greens. I was so excited. And then the squirrels were like getting to my tomatoes. And I was getting so frustrated because like I would see these squirrels getting plump. Okay, they was eating good. I'm like, squirrels ain't never looked this fat before. And then I'm looking, I'm like, you eat my stuff. Like, so then I was talking to my husband. I'm like, we gotta, I need you to build me some type of like cage, like a cover to go over my garden beds because the squirrels get into it or whatever. And so like we brainstorming and stuff, and we never got around to it because whenever you have a new house, it's a lot of stuff that you got to do. So we never got around to it or whatever. I just surrendered and came into acceptance that, you know what, this is not just my land. They are not going to go anywhere. That's number two. They're not going anywhere. They live in the trees and they're moving around, and they are harvesting so that they can, prepare for the winter.
Yep.
Let them have some. Some of your tomatoes is falling and rotting anyway or whatever. They're not going to eat more tomatoes than you going to eat. So, and I was okay with it. And now second season has ended, and I just looked out my window today and I saw a squirrel digging and probably digging up one of my potatoes because I planted potatoes this year. So digging up some potatoes, and then I seen a couple of birds picking out some amaranth seeds because that grows in abundance. And I just felt gratitude that it wasn't just for me. Like, I'm feeding them and their families as well. I'm just like, go ahead, So
yeah,
I know that heartwarming feeling that you're talking about. Yeah,
like it's enough. And sometimes it takes for those moments, like to observe those moments, and there's not always a word, and it's not always an opportunity to capture this other than to be in that moment, to like rewire, we're talking about being robots, like to rewire that part of you that feels like you need to like hoard and protect. And I think about, like, I remember in Chicago, the squirrels were definitely eating our tomatoes, but we grew a lot of tomatoes, and our neighbors downstairs grew a lot of tomatoes. So like at the end of the season, we were giving them away because it was just too much. So I'm just like, that makes perfect sense. And here, the squirrels are not really an issue where we live now, but like family of deer come into our backyard. And I have never been able to be like that close to deer and just observe them for long periods of time. And I'm like, eat my shit, please. Because when else am I gonna get this opportunity to like see you and marvel in this other being, like their family unit? Like, you can tell, you watch them for 5-10 minutes, you know exactly who's older, who's the mom, who's the kids, and who's the lookout, because one of them kind of doesn't like frolic as much as the other and is just like paying attention, and you get to see this family structure and like this other species. And I feel like that rewires something. It's like a reminder of my own primalness, like I am this, I'm connected to this, I'm not separate from this, and I don't need to protect myself from this by like gating up my food. And the bunnies too. The bunnies ate all our kale. I'm glad we did like bags at this place that we're renting. So I'm glad we did 5 bags of kale, because there was one that they really didn't bother. And I'm like, thank you. Thank you for this. We learned some things about, spraying like a little cayenne water or something on them just to kind of deter them. And I'm like, I feel totally okay now moving forward in like my growing career, if you will, to like just grow a little bit for the animals around, and then grow what we need for our family. And that being like just how it goes. It's like, because y'all are gonna bring certain things. Like, we had hummingbirds. I'm like, whenever you see a hummingbird, it's so rare unless you have like a hummingbird feeder, but it's so rare. And you got all those butterflies and just pollinators buzzing around your stuff. And you're like, y'all are bringing such goodness. So of course you can have some. And it just feels like I said, there's not even a word for it, but it's definitely making me feel more grounded and connected to something much larger than me, and thinking about
Yeah.
what care actually is. And it's not just like for me and my blood, it's like it's for all life, for all beings, and
Yes.
recognizing that being in balance with giving and receiving. If you're giving that care, you know that you're going to be cared for by all life and by all beings.
Yeah. That pushes me to like how we care for animals without possessing them, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like my aunt, my aunt. She transitioned back in 2020 as well, but she was such a humble spirit, and she had, we called it a pet squirrel, but I mean, he was a pet. He was just
Wild squirrel that used to hang out.
He just hung out, and she would sit out on the porch. This is her ritual. My granny, they sat on the front porch, and she would always bring out some nuts, and you just throw them down the stairs, like down to the sidewalk. He lived in like the tree right in front of our house, so he would just come out and he'd get it. But over time of her doing that, feeding the squirrel walnuts or bill nuts or whatever it is she had at the time, he would slowly but surely get closer and closer. Like he would come up the stairs a little bit. It got to the point to where she was able to feed that squirrel out her hand. And I was just like, wow, look at you, like making friends with Mother Nature. But it just made me think about like, and really like reimagine what relationships with animals could look like without us needing to have them as pets. Mm-hmm. Like, and I'm not against it if you have an animal as a pet, but maybe like we said, when we're decolonizing time and caregiving, maybe decolonize certain language as well, because a pet is serving it, right?
Yeah, you're the owner.
So you're the owner, right? So like, now obviously if you have like a work dog, like a sheep dog or something like that, if you're living on a farm, maybe not call it a pet. Maybe that this being is a part of your family, and just like you get up every day to milk the cow, they every day to herd sheep, and in exchange you are offering them shelter and food and love and warmth and happiness. And it also made me just kind of think about like in the city, how we have a lot of cats. Okay, it's a lot of stray cats out here, and I talk my mess to the cats sometimes, because they'll come back. I done found some cat poop in my backyard or something, and and I'm like, and I know which one it is. I'm like, that was you. This is not a kitty litter. I'm trying to grow food back here. Be talking my mess or whatever. But I have some neighbors who feed the cats. They leave some little food out for them or whatever, like little cans of tuna and stuff, and then it just made me think like, yeah, like that's the neighborhood cat that keep the mice away. We live in an urban environment, and so we're prone to having more rodents, but we really want the cats nearby. We want them around, and I don't know, I'm just like marveling in the ideas of how like some of my elders have already had this like instilled in them, but it just I don't know, like maybe me growing up and like maybe being indoctrinated and like going to a school where you learn about caring for animals in a different lens, it had me thinking a lot differently. And so like I can think back like my dad saying, no, you just get you a cat. If you ever have problems or you have a mouse or something that got in your house, you get you a cat. I'm like, where I get a cat from? I gotta go to the animal shelter and get a cat, which is, I'm an animal lover, so of course I would go there or whatever. And he so up the street, he got cats. And I'm like, all right, I guess I can go get a cat. Where does cat live at? Right, he got cats. I'm like, where does cat live at? It ain't no, you gotta let that cat out. Let it out. It go out and in. It's an indoor outdoor cat. I'm like, what type of philosophy is this? But he has some wisdom
behind it. A teenager, young adult.
That's Roman, right? And he had philosophy behind it or whatever, which was, this cat is not yours to possess. The cat is here and you've given it shelter and it's helping you do a job, but it needs to still get out and do its thing, and live or whatever. And so, it just made me kind of think about like how we care for animals that are not necessarily ours. And we might even name them. We might even name them whatever. That's Tabby and, that's Joe. Joe has a broken tail, but whatever. So I don't know. I think that that's a really good way of like living in harmony with animals that are like maybe not as domesticated as like what we would consider a pet.
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like that perspective is the only way that I could see myself, like even being in relationship, cohabitating, with an animal, because the only one that I learned, in my indoctrinated life is you own them. You own them, you take care of them. And if you got a good one, they'll do good things and make you feel good. I'm like, this sounds like a slave.
Yeah.
And I struggle with that. And, I think especially like when you live a life of having like targeted identities and feeling marginalized, like your empathy gap is not that wide. So you can feel that a little bit more versus if you're constantly a part of a dominant culture where you don't ever have to be intimate with what that feels like, it's so much easier to like possess and own animals and have tons of them and, send them to boarding so they could be perfect pets and, all those things. So yeah, I'm grateful for that perspective. And I remember that happened when you posted that cat.
Hey, she wanted to get back to the streets. I let her go, bad baby, because I couldn't do the back and forth, the in and out, whatever. And then, she was a little feisty. She didn't really blend too well with us, whatever. She like, I'm here for a time. I'm here for a good time, not a long time. I'm like, see you later. So I just let her
go. Oh my goodness. Yeah, I definitely remember that. Well, I wanted to just like maybe take a moment to kind of check in with like some of the things that we were feeling most when we decided to have this conversation. Because I'm reflecting back on the question of like, we take care of the family who takes care of us. I remember that was like a foundational question. And as we like kind of expounded on it, we were like, this is a whole thing, this is much larger, but I wanted to maybe take these last minutes as opportunities to kind of get grounded in like our more personal experiences with care, being providers of care or receiving care, in any of the ways that we've talked about, or maybe ways that we haven't talked about. And yeah, just kind of bring in that personal touch of how like decolonization of care looks in our own unique lives. And we can like take a moment to like reflect
about that. Yeah. Like two things kind of popped up for me. So one is what like currently how I'm living, and one is like what I'm preparing to live in the future. And these are like recurrent themes in my life. Right now, I live in a family system in my immediate family where I am staying at home. I'm a stay-at-home wife and mom, and my husband is the provider. He goes out, he works, and he comes back into the home. I do work on the side because I'm a doula, but that field gives me enough flexibility to where I can center myself and my family. And while this way of living is not like we have all the kinks ironed out, because we weren't even raised in this manner. He nor I, we raised with like, mom and dad living together with the children, and only one parent leaves the home, particularly the father. So we are like defining that and like reaching back and figuring out other systems and ways and how it did work harmoniously, and um, and not with competition, but more with like cohesion. How I am complimenting you, you're complimenting me. We're not competing for the same roles, and that works very well so far. That's been the one structure that has worked well for us as a family, and for us as a family. I'll say that. Now, if we were to be living single or separate, or in some other unique way, then maybe another structure would work. But as of right now, what benefits the family most is how we both are like, how the roles that we have, these very traditional gender roles, as people will call them. And that supports me because I don't have the stress that I used to have with working. I've been working since I was 15 years old. And so there was not a lot of time for me to care for myself or even learn how to care for myself. I am learning about just caring for myself as a being now at 30 years old. And it's because I was always raised in the grind culture. You get up, you work hard, and you play later. And sometimes that looks like neglect. It looks like neglecting yourself. Whatever you work, like what I'm doing now, I wouldn't have been able to say, oh yeah, I'm on my moon, so I can't work, or I can't cook breakfast this morning, or whatever. I wouldn't have been able to do that 15 years ago, 10 years ago. But this lifestyle has afforded me that luxury, and it feels good. It feels good to be like finally like in sync with myself. Hell, I just learned how to braid hair 2 years ago. I'm like, all this time I didn't know how to like just care for my hair in the way that it needs to be cared for. I just learned how to like really do a really good shampoo and conditioner a few months ago. But I wouldn't have been able to take the time to seek the information and learn from professionals. There's that word again, professionals, or just people that are more well-versed or have more time and experience than I had. I wouldn't have had that had I not been living in this way. So I'm super, super grateful and appreciative of the way that we live. And then my husband also gets a nice little period of vacation. It's like a little over a month. And that affords us so much like time to care for one another, or for me to be cared for. So most of the time I am with the children most of the day, and obviously, but it feels good to say, like I got a vacation coming up, where I can I'm not going to be primary parent, and he can be with the kids and do certain things with them, and we can tap each other in and out, and it's really good for me and my nervous system, and it feels good for my nervous system. I can definitely feel a distinct difference. And it feels good for like us, like, I don't know, what would be the word, like tuck pointing our foundation. Like I'm thinking about brick masons and how they have to tuck point every 10, 15 years to make sure that the brick, the mortar between the brick is like not, disintegrating. And that's kind of what it feels like. So it's like, this is good. This feels currently. And I don't know what it's going to feel like in the future, but we're just on that road. Now, what I'm imagining and what I'm trying to make space for and prepare for is, and I've said this to you before, I want space for when I am on my moon to be 100% totally pampered. And it doesn't have to come from my husband, because he has his own job and fulfillments that he has to do. But I want to be totally at ease. And maybe that looks like the kids going to Nana's for that week. Maybe that looks like, me calling in a cleaner to clean the home and be prepping and having certain meals and, just being able to rest and really, really just like get into this cozy period. And so I'm trying to find ways and I'm brainstorming on ways I can do that and just allow that to be a part of my life and a part of like caring for myself and how and receiving care from others. And in addition to that, in the future, what I'm really preparing for, because, if people have heard me talk before, they might have heard a slight or a bitterness in like what I'm missing or what I've missed as like growing up without having like what I wanted as parents, but given the circumstances that my parents went through, I've gone through them because I was birthed into that family unit. And, my mom didn't have the opportunity to stay at home and, my dad didn't have the opportunity to be in the home. And so this is just what it is. I am preparing for my children to have that. That's why I'm living that I'm living now. And I'm preparing for my grandchildren because I want them to have all the experiences that I was able to have with my grandma. And so I'm preparing to be a really good grandmother and be able to offer that type of care to my children and my grandchildren, so that they can know what that feels like innately. So those are the two like themes that kind of came up when I think about like I'm nurturing people, but who's nurturing me? Like I'll be nurtured later on. I'm putting my work in now because I think the grandchildren are going to be wonderful. If I'm blessed to have them, I think they're going to be wonderful. And I think they're going to love being with their grandma and their granddad. And I just, and I think that's a form of nurturing too. They're going to be nurturing me in my elder years, in my crone stage. And, like I think of my grandma, she loves my kids. She loves my kids. And she loves just talking to them and feeding them snacks that I don't like for her to feed them. But, grandmas get a kick out of that type of stuff. And, so I don't know what that feels like, but I can see it through her eyes that it feels good and it's nurturing a part of her soul. And my granny as well. She's 90. And I was just talking to her about like, if she had some little kids running around, because I always said, I just wish I was capable. I just wish I was physically capable to get them babies. And she mean that with every part of her body. She mean it. And if she was, I would drop them off to her because she, like she said, she's like, it just helps you. Just being an older woman like me, it just does to your spirit. It just keep you living, it keep you just here and keep you wanting to do stuff. And so I'm like, man, I wonder what that's gonna feel like, in the future. So those are just some things that I'm thinking about as far as nurturing and being nurtured.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. I feel like I needed to hear, especially that last part. And I feel like when you were talking about it, like just for a quick second, like I can't see it now. I keep searching, but I could see like facially how you would look when you were older.
Yeah.
But now it's gone. So yeah, I was like, I think it was just a split second with the light, and I was like, it was like right as you were talking about that. But yeah, thank you so much for that. That last part especially has me thinking about. We didn't talk about this so much, but like, we kind of maybe hinted towards it, but talking about like care for youth and care for elders and how everybody has a role. And so just kind of like that testimony from your grandmother and being like, yeah, like it makes me feel essentially what I heard is like she feels useful and she feels connected and belonging when she has like something to do as it relates to the younger generations. And I feel like that's really important when we talk about care work is like the generational work. And so I would say for myself, I have been kind of on that wave with you, like just constantly decolonizing the dynamics within my family unit, but also working to expand beyond my nuclear family. And that's becoming more and more easeful. And even just like not being in the type of like, I'll say the dynamic that people expect for like a man and a woman to be in if they like have children and live together and cohabitate, but to
Mhm.
constantly be like challenging that to not fit like the expectation, but more so to fit what works for
Yeah.
us and what allows for people to, be cared for. And to your point, like it's not easy and it's not neat because like this hasn't been modeled. We don't have mentorship. We're figuring things out. Um, but that feels like an important foundational step to then expanding what family means and it not
Mhm.
just being the people that you live with or share money or share children or blood, but really being able to like expand that to like the people that you live near that like do a certain thing together. Like you do this thing together, or you have this shared value, or you equally benefit from something. So you put forth energy. And so the way that that's looking in my life right now is just being so connected to a community of folks that really came from like this is a perfect uh like if I follow all of the steps that I didn't know, like what was coming on the other end, but like it's a
Mhm.
perfect culmination to everything that I've been investing my energy into, like around communication, around like emotional maturation and connectivity and ritual and celebration and being self-directed and all these ways just kind of like culminated into us finding like such a beautiful community for our children to kind of be a part of and then
Mhm.
for us to also be a part of. And so it feels very different from like when people talk about like schools or whatever, it's like yeah, you
Yeah.
could be involved in the parent teacher association or whatever, um, but like how often do you feel like it's a family? And so like this learning center, I feel like, you know, we showed up, we shared intention to be a part. Um, we don't even bring our kids all the time. We don't attend everything that's happening, but we're just accepted how we are. And it's just this beautiful little ecosystem of support. And so now here we are. It's been maybe since March since we've been connected with them. Now it's October, we're moving. I was literally able to just like put a post on like the platform that we use to communicate. And people that like I don't even really know, like haven't even met in person, but like we just kind of know that we're all associated, are like
Mhm.
willing to support with like, oh, you need boxes, you need tape, you need, labor power, you need trucks. We got this, and I'm just like, wow, like what did I do to deserve this? And recognizing that like I just exist, so I deserve it. And what that's really helping me do, and this has been a part of my intention since, we relocated, is to like slow down my nervous system enough to be receptive to the messages that are coming through. And a part
Yeah.
of that, like receptivity practice, is receiving help because
Mhm.
I'm so used to like being the helper or being the one providing or giving. And a part of me really does enjoy that, but another part of me is like really traumatized in feeling like that's the only way that I am of value, so that's why it
Mhm.
really like touched me, um what you shared about, your grandmother saying like, I feel useful, or I feel valuable, at this age to be able to connect. I feel like I've always felt that, and I feel like some of it is like very genuine to just who I am and my personality. But a nice chunk of it is like trauma of feeling like
Yeah.
if I don't provide something that makes me valuable, that I will be like outcasted or I will be left
Mhm.
behind and I won't be useful. And then, there goes my survival, there goes my well being. And so opening myself up more to be receptive has been probably the medicine that I've needed so long to be like, no, you didn't have to invest this much of your energy, time, dollars into these people for them to say, yeah, I got you. Like, it's just because they can do it right now. And I asked because I asked. And that's important because I wasn't even going to ask because I'm like, the same with like meeting up with strangers. It's like, I don't know about this, but it's like, how can I ask? Like, you got your own lives, you got your own kids, you got stuff going on, but another mother, who's a friend, was just like, just ask, because all people could do is say yes or no. Like,
Yeah.
and I was like, true. And I feel like I give that advice way more readily than I take it. So
Yeah.
I was like, let me just take my own medicine, and that has just like really expanded my idea of care in a way that I'm just really grateful. Um, and then also, like, I noticed the shift since I've been here. I haven't been like taking births. I have worked with postpartum client for 3 months. Um, but that was more like motivated by like needing a little extra income and things like that. But I've been wanting to take space because, as you know, like being a birth worker, like is very consuming. Like you are giving of your time, your energy. When we're
Mhm.
not physically with the person, you're holding it in your atmosphere for when they're going to need you, when they're going to have a baby, postpartum, they can't breastfeed. Like it's very consuming. And I had gotten like so used to like giving to the point that now
Mhm.
that I've had this stretch, it's almost been a year. I attended my last birth at the end of October last year. So it's been almost a year of not attending births when I was like attending 4 in a month.
Mhm.
Big shift. And I'm recognizing there have been like lots of people that have reached out in this year that are like, I'm having another baby, like I'm ready. And then I'm like, I moved. um, like it's been about 10 people. And I was just thinking to myself, like one of the things I've always appreciated is like not having to be like a advertising kind of doula, to just be
Yeah.
able to like build a relationship like, traditional birth workers, and be able to just be in relationship with family and call in the people that want to receive whatever I'm offering. And then, they'll keep having babies, and then their babies will have babies. And so it was like bittersweet because I really wanted to be present for,
Mm.
these families expanding. But it was also, again, just like that FOMO feeling of like not working
Mhm.
on a Wednesday, not doing anything on a Wednesday, even if it's something that would fill me up to like be present for these second, third, fourth births for these families. I can still be in connection with them without being in a role of like giving in that
Yeah.
way. Like there's still ways for us to be connected and trusting, like they will get their needs met. They will find someone who can support them, and trusting that I can, you know, kind of put my feet down and plant them onto the ground that I'm on, and kind of conjure up that same feeling of like community support. And right now it's looking like I'm not the giver as much, I'm the receiver. So it just feels
Mm.
very full circle. And that has been on my heart a lot when I think about this concept of decolonizing care and caregiving, because a part of giving is receiving. Like they
Yes.
don't exist in isolation.
Mhm. I'm so glad you said that. That goes back to decolonizing time. You are taking the time and the cycle that you're in. You're
Yeah.
in a cycle right now where you are not able to give like you were before. And so you're on the other end. You're just receiving.
Yeah.
It's good.
Yeah. Yeah, and that could have gone like so many different ways. Like we get in our heads about like what it means when we slow down and we, take time. It's like, am I getting behind, or, is this
Yep.
happening or whatever? When it's just like, no, you're just resting and you
Yeah.
deserve it. Yeah.
Oh, goodness. Well, this is a very, very productive, thorough, well needed chat.
Yeah, it was. It
I
really was.
appreciate it.
Me too. And like I said, that last little bit that you shared, I felt like it was a divine message channeled right through you. Um, yeah, it makes me think about my grandmother, my nana. She's been in the hospital. Well, she's in rehab, but like a rehabilitation hospital. She's been there for months, and um, I think parts of me have maybe like been so in my little element that I haven't even thought about maybe some of the mental, emotional things that can be happening for her, not being able to have that connection like with the grandkids. Cause like I bring them, but like she was kind of in and out of being like, I want them here, but I kind of don't because I don't want them to see me like not being myself.
Yeah.
And then also having them with me all the time has been a barrier for me coming more often. Like my
Mhm.
uncle goes all the time because he doesn't have any little children. And he's himself. He can like zip, zip after work, you know. Whereas I have them and their schedule and dinner and bedtime and all of that. So we've been seeing her less than when she was living in her apartment. So we'll, you know, try to see her once or twice at most in a week. And I haven't really like taken the time to reflect on how, you know, she could be experiencing this, like not having that connection to her grandkids. Cause she's expressed something similar before, like, you know, just loving them and just
Mhm.
feeling like purposeful, like wanting to spoil them. And, you know, that's what grandparents are for. So we're just really grateful for that came through you.
Yeah, of course. Well, for those of you who have stuck around and who've gone on this journey with us as we, talked about decolonizing caregiving, thank you. I know we have one viewer on YouTube. I'm not sure. Do we have any comments? Any last minute
Mm,
questions or comments anybody wants to give before we depart?
no comments over here.
Okay.
Um, so hopefully people will be able to take a look at the replay. If you
Yeah.
have um, watched this as a replay, feel free to just kind of add to the conversation. Like there are
Mhm.
so many ways that we can talk about care and the culture of care outside of what we did bring up. So if there are ways that you want to contribute to the conversation, um, I feel like we could talk about this again and again. Please
Yeah.
do like comment and take good care of yourself in the
Yes.
meantime.
Yes. All right. Well, I think that'll about do it. We will see you all every Tuesday, every first Tuesday of the month. So our next one will be in November. And so stay tuned for the flyer to go out. We'll be live again. And I don't know, is there anything else, any other announcements we have?
Not yet. They're pending.
Stay
We're not
tuned
gonna
for
put a
that one.
time on it.
Yeah. Stay tuned for that one. Also every Wednesday, the Child Learning Co-op and the Rebirth Society, we have a partnership where we are we meet with the children. We call it Homeschool Social Hour, and it's virtual. So it's at 11 o'clock Central Standard Time. The children get online, and they are so excited. They get to talk to each other. They're learning how to navigate, and they're learning how to control the technology, lest it control them. So
Mm.
that looks like learning how to mute, unmute, have conversations over these systems, and they all learn certain topics, and we have different character words, and they do games, and they show and tell, and so that's something that they look forward to every single week. I know my girl, she loves it, and so if that's something that you're interested in, or you want to just check it out, look inside of our bio on IG, or you can go to our website www.thetribelearning.com. That sounds like something I should have on the caption going green, but I don't have it ready. And the way that my body is set up right now, I'm not moving. So um, I would say just go on our website and check it out. Or you can check out our IG for other things that we have coming up. You can follow us so that you'll be first to know of any other new explorations. So I think
Yes.
that's about it.
Yes. Thank you all for tuning in. Until next time. Peace.